Desiree, and I am here with the second video. I wanted to make sure that I showed you how to create the pop-up butterfly. I am also going to use her stamp set in her collection called Butterfly Sentiments. These are the pieces that come in the die set. So you have the butterfly itself. There are score lines that are in these pieces as well, and those wings you can cut the solid base, and then by inserting the intricate section you will get the wing part that comes up over it. So let's do our coloring first. I am a huge fan of ink smushing. Absolutely love it. So I pulled out my Bristol cardstock because it can take lots of water, and I am using Tattered Rose, Aged Mahogany, Forest Moss, and Shabby Shutters. And I'm starting with the lightest. I always start with the lightest and I go to the darkest. I'm using a silicone craft mat because that will give me the texture, the baubles, because it will bead up onto this mat. You can see I'm just layering and layering. The inks that I'm using are regular distress inks. Here is the key. You can keep layering your ink smushing. You just need to make sure that you dry in between each color. Remember, these are water reactive. So as you're taking your paper, and when I take my paper down into the ink, I go straight down and I come straight up. I don't wiggle the paper. If I want a watercolor look, I'll wiggle that paper. And that's what happened in before that you saw when I was doing that second panel. There are two panels that I am making. So I have the light colors down, and now I'm coming in with the darker shades, the forest green or forest moss and the aged mahogany. For the first one, I just did splatters. For the second, I spread out that color because it's going to bead, and I ink smushed down into it. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to splatter on the one panel after I had my base of the lighter, and the more ink you have down to less water ratio, the darker your color will be. I spread out the color across my mat. I wanted to make sure that this piece was dry first, because reds and greens are going to give me a brown. They're going to go possibly a little muddy. So just by going up and down, you're not going to get too much. You can see that some of it was starting to smear, but I want this panel to be a little bit fuller, a little bit deeper when it comes to the ink. For this panel, I'm splattering water. I'm tapping it. I'm making those water droplets move. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. But again, I want to dry it. I've always said when it comes to Bristol cardstock, there's a vellum and there is a smooth. I've never really noticed the difference. I am noticing a difference, finally. I always grabbed my vellum. I always grab the one that's closest to me. This time I'm using the smooth. I do not like it for ink smushing. Yeah. It reacted differently. Wasn't quite sure what it was doing there. But you can see it really muddled up my colors. Not like before. I like the look though. This is very grungy because of the way the inks are on this paper. But you can see this one. It went a little different, but it's okay. Because again, I was looking for those two different panels. So I'm going to do a comparison. I'm going to do another video on ink smushing to really test that out. All right, back to the card though. So I'm taking the two dies without the details inside, and I'm going to run that through my Spellbinders 6 because I want those wings to have all that splatter. That's going to be the bottom base. I'm then taking the other panel. The card that I'm making is going to be a 5x7 card. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting this down, but I want to make sure that the ink smushing that I did is positioned in a certain way on my card. So I keep trimming each of the edges. Now, these strips that you're seeing, I keep those strips because you can stamp a sentiment on it. And for this card, that's exactly what I do. So they are great backgrounds. And I do keep them. I have a folder that I just throw all of those in. And again, I keep my backgrounds when I make extra backgrounds. I could do ink smushing all day. I think it is very relaxing. So now that I have my panel cut down to 4.5 by 6.5, I'm now going to put this in my stamp positioning tool, and I've placed my butterflies. I'm using the 3 butterflies from the stamp set, and I'm going to use my clear ink. I am not going to use my anti-static powder. I'm okay if there's specks of gold that end up throughout this image, because I think that will just add to the texture. I am going to stamp this a couple times. I want to make sure that I have enough of the clear ink down so that it will pick up my embossing powder. For this, I'm using my Gold Recollections by Michaels. This is my favorite embossing powder when it, especially for metallics, is the Recollections. It just smooths out when I heat set this with my heat tool. Gives me beautiful, beautiful results. So this is one of my go-tos. I'm heat setting that down, and I just have this faint impression of those butterflies onto this panel. Now, I stamped my sentiment, and I'm using Congratulations, but the side that I used had a little bit more of the dark green. Again, these are water reactive. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in with a brush with clean water, liquefying it, just rubbing against it, and then I'm using a paper towel to pick up some of that ink. It's going to make that ink lighter so that my sentiment that I did in gold is more visible. I wanted that just to stand out. I'm going to place this down onto some glitter cardstock, and I'm just going to trim around that so that I have a thin border of that glitter cardstock coming in around it. So let's start making our butterfly. I have everything die cut that I need, but first I'm going to put the front of my card together. So I have my panel that is cut 5 by 7, and I cut out the center so that I can hoard my glitter cardstock because that's what I do. And I'm going to use some double-sided tape. I'm going to use my paper creaser just to run that along to get into those crevices of the glitter. And then I'm going to set my panel on top of that. Now, again, lots of water. This is warped from drying it, from all of that water and ink that I've added. And if you just heard that thump, I apologize. That was my cat. So whenever I do a watercolor panel or an ink smushed panel, I do like to use my double-sided tape by Uline. It's 2-inch film tape, and and as I roll it across the back, it flattens my panel out. And then when I put that onto my card base won't go wonky either. So here is the mechanism. Now what I'm going to do is there's score lines on the die, so I'm folding down on the score line for the solid wings. I'm cutting off that section off of the fancy wings. So that's what we'll call them, solid and fancy. I'm then bending the mechanism so that the 2 small edges are up, and then it just keeps going back and forth. You want to create those hills and valleys. I'm going to use both double-sided tape and liquid glue for this. I'm going to remove the release paper, add a little bit of glue, and on the center mountain, you want the point to be up, and your 2 sides will be up. You're going to place a wing on each side, making sure that they're even. So you've got this folded line in between those wings, which is okay, because we're going to cover that up. So that's what it looks like right now. What you're going to do then is you're going to then rebend, and you're going to create squares on each side of these wings, basically. I'm going to use a small piece of double-sided tape, some glue, and now I'm just going to bend this around so that it just about touches that score line on the wing. So it's going to be just above. Just going to, yes, that was a very fancy pen there, that I'm just going to go in so that I can rub that to make sure that it's up onto the wing and in position. So there's your two squares when it's fully flat. Now, you could attach this into your card. That is something I do suggest. Well, the wings here were easy. So you could attach your fancy wings while it's outside of your card. And this was my error. My boo-boo. Mine. All mine. Once my wings are attached, and I only put glue down the center, closest to the center point of the butterfly. So then I took the center of the butterfly, the body, and folded that in half. There is a score line in there as well. I added glue and then folded it in half. Now, forgetting that this was glitter paper, so add some double-sided tape to your images when you do that. It'll have a stronger bond with glue. Fold your butterfly in half, and you're going to put glue and tape just on that bottom long piece. Okay, that's the only spot where you want that. Make sure you're not right into your fold of your card. Go out just a hair, because this will fill up all of that center. And you saw I was pointing to that. So again, you're only putting your tape and or your glue along the long section of the box that you've created, that mechanism. I have to reapply the center of my butterfly. Just having glue, it just was not sticking. It wasn't staying in place. I folded up my card because that's how you can attach the other side. Just simply doing the same thing, and when you fold your card along it, it'll pick up the other side of that butterfly. I apologize, I didn't say that as I was doing that. I'm taking the center of the two butterflies and applying those using that glitter cardstock, excuse me. And now I'm going to set my sentiment in between two of the butterflies and propping that using double-sided foam tape. So you can see that you get this beautiful pop-up in the center of your card. Again, remember it's glitter paper. That was my mistake. You know, you need both that tape and that glue to get that adhesion. But I finally got that center of the body of the butterfly to stick. I really like this. I think there are so many things that can be done with it. It's very easy to put together, and I know that there will be so many more videos maybe showing a different way to put this together as well. As always, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope I gave you some tips and tricks and some ideas featuring the pop-up butterfly from Bibi's Butterfly Collection with Spellbinders. As always, all the products I used will be listed down below with the link if you choose to check them out. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below, and I will make sure I get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, enjoy this process and have fun. Create what you want to create and try new things. Try different things, but always dig into your stash and have fun with that as well. But always remember what's most important to me, and it always will be. Always be creative, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Take care.